Hi there, Cheryl here. Today is an extremely special day. I am so excited for this important conversation with Karuana Gatimu, Principal Manager, Customer Advocacy Group in Microsoft Teams Engineering. Karuana, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Now, I cannot wait to talk about managing your personal and professional P&L. I want to know what that means and how I can do it better. And I think that's such a great topic for women in the workplace as well. But before we jump in, I would love to know, if you don't mind sharing, was there something or someone that inspired you to greatness? I mean, what sparked your interest and how did you get to where you are today?
Oh, that's a great question. I have to say no, there wasn't a person or individual. Really, my path into technology was just a series of events. I have a creative background. When I was young, I was a dancer. I moved to Los Angeles with all sorts of stars in my eyes, and technology was my day job. Instead of waiting tables, I worked in as a paralegal in a law firm, and then I got really interested in technology that was specific to that industry. And eventually I kept getting promoted in this business. And, at some point when you get promoted, you have to make a choice. And I chose technology. So I do not have a degree in tech in any way, shape, or form. And so, I really feel like my path here has been out of interest and curiosity and opportunity more than being inspired by any one person.
That's so interesting. I really want to highlight something that you said, and that, you don't have the degree, and it wasn't this, clear cut path. And so, for anyone listening, if you're like, wow, technology or something else sounds really interesting in me, but when I was in my 20s, I didn't study this, I wasn't on that path. I think this is going to be an ongoing message that we're going to say is to just go for it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of things that we talked about, before we went live, that you're really walking the walk and living that. So I look forward to getting into that, in a moment. And so now, is there if you think about, your journey from when you maybe started off to make ends meet so you could do your true love, and then you decided, wait a minute, I'm pretty good in this, I'm getting promoted, so I think maybe this might be my career. Was there ever any a time when things went sideways, or maybe you got rejected, or you had a setback, but then you dusted off and decided to move forward anyway?
Oh, 100%. I think that the moments in my career when I have learned the most have been from the things that have been most painful. And so while you might put it in the loss category of your P&L, I actually consider it to be on the profit side. Because those things that have made me grow as a professional, good example. So I had my own company for a while. I've been at Microsoft for a decade now, but before that, I had my own company. And I started that company after leaving a vice president position in New York at a professional services firm. And I thought, hey, now's a good time for me to start my own company. Except less than 7 or 8 months later, 9/11 happened. And most of my customers were in New York. And so that really decimated my new company. And I had to pivot and really get scrappy about how I was going to grow that company and take in different lines of business and do different things. So, I think I've read a lot of, MBA books. I don't have an MBA, but I tend to read all the books on the program list. That's one of the ways I've self-educated over time. But I think that year and a half in my life really taught me the most about being a manager through difficult times. Whether it was the dot-com bust, the recession after 9/11, there's been different times, COVID for many people out there now, where, the business environment becomes super challenging. And that's really when you begin to grow as a manager, as a leader, providing, comfort to people who are following you and provide clarity for folks, and do what you can to show empathy to yourself first and then to others after that.
Yeah, 100%. And it sounds like in those times, or when you get forced to be creative.
Yeah.
Like it feels like in a way we're moving into that environment again. At least I know from a couple of the companies and the leaders that I work with, where in some cases COVID was actually good for business,
Yes.
and then it was like barreling along and everything was amazing. And like the salespeople didn't really have to sell and it was more of a supply issue. And now we're entering into a different season.
Yes, for sure we are. And I think that I love that you use that word season, because I think people sometimes seek continuity, and that's not the way of my career or of my life. There are seasons to things, and being able to flow with that, right? Being able to recognize the signs that the leaves are changing before they do. For me has been a really big skill I've tried to learn more of, and that I wish somebody had taught me when I was younger, because I don't think I understood these things when I was younger in my career. I think I had certain expectations about how things were going to be. And now I realize that it's really about the relationships I create with people around me, and being able to slow down to speed up, and being able to invest in places where I feel like I'm getting an emotional and professional return. That really helps me navigate those seasons with people around me that I think get my skills and talent and what I bring to the table.
Yeah, so important. I love that you said to slow down before you speed up. It's so
100%.
so important these days. And so just to parlay, something else really important that you said, and and I was wondering if you were speaking with the younger. Well, clearly you're still young, but the younger Caruana, what advice would you have for the younger Caruana, which might be great advice for us all?
Yeah, I feel like I didn't have a lot of super positive family structure, or people in my environment that I was observing who are really successful. I didn't have a lot of that. My family history is somewhat chaotic. And I think that the result of that was that I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself when I was younger. And I wish anybody would have told me, just go for it, right? Just go for it. Don't listen so much to the ideas of who other people think you are, right? Take the time to try to figure out who you want to be. How do you want to show up? Have fun with things. Stop worrying about impact and measures, and start worrying about the legacy you're leaving in the relationships around you and the businesses that you have. I really wish I would have freed myself from the tether of other people's opinions earlier in my career. Because now at this point, I really have integrated my creative career. Like, I'm on air talent for Microsoft. I'm a technical storyteller and editor at Microsoft, along with doing the product work I do. So I've really merged my creative desires and my technology acumen together in one job. And I didn't even know that that was possible, because I kept trying to fit into other people's buckets instead of making my own. Right. And, that your uniqueness is an asset. It's not a limitation. And I certainly didn't know that when I was younger.
So I want to highlight and repeat, first of all, free yourself. That should be on a sticky note on every woman's computer. Free
Yes.
myself. Because
Yes.
a lot of times we have some self imposed fear and doubt and limitations that we put on ourselves, which is understandable because the reason, we won't spend today talking about the reason, but, we're up against some cultural indoctrinations that make that totally normal.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that we can't push through, like you did. And I think when you said that your uniqueness is your strength, it's just a different dialogue that we're having with ourselves, right? Not like,
Right.
well, I'm kind of strange because my background is this and everyone else's background is that. But how powerful is it when you turn that around and say, how powerful this can be, that my background is this. In other words, what do I bring to the table that's uniquely me?
Yeah, absolutely. And, as a woman of color, a woman in technology, a bisexual woman, all of these things people used to call three strikes. Actually, I think I'm a triple threat. I
Mhm.
think that that is a positive, it gives me positive capabilities and, quite frankly, a diverse and unique perspective when it comes to product development or community management or business management or career development. Like, pick a topic, and my perspective is probably going to be unique, as is everyone else's. And
Mhm.
it's that is really the diversity of thought and style that you want to drive. If you want an inclusive, high performing team, you have to make people feel like their uniqueness is what you're seeking, that they feel included at that seat in the table. Getting the seat at the table is not enough, right? You need to feel like you're included in the conversation, like you're valued in the dialogue. And so I feel like that's something that we can all do. We can all lean in and make people feel valued in the dialogues that you're having with them, in at the right time and at the right place, right? And so, it took me a really, really long time to be able to say these things about myself without choking up or saying the word, well, I'm just this, or I'm just a little bit of this, or, I don't have a degree in technology, but I'm still like good at this, right? Like, coming from that position of being less than instead of being just enough, right?
Mhm.
If that's one other thing I would tell my younger self, is that she's enough. She
Mhm.
doesn't have to be anything else. And she doesn't have to compare herself to other people. And if I can remember that every day for the rest of my life, I will do just fine.
No, 100%. And there's a saying that was with one of my coaching mentors, is that like new level, new devil. So we
Yeah.
need to consistently, it's not like, oh, I got that down. Then
No.
you get pulled into a bigger arena, or into, you have a seat at one table. Now you have a seat at the next table, and you want to remember this. So to make sure you have a voice at that table.
Right.
And I love what you said about other other people being mindful of this. But I think we as women, especially women who are further marginalized within our gender, it it's a combination of both, and
Right.
feeling like we belong, and also being, having allies to be proactive
Yes.
and reminding. And so that is so important, and I'm so glad that you brought that up.
And I love that you just mentioned allies too. I was talking with somebody just this week about the fact that, to me, an ally is someone who speaks well of me or represents my interests when I'm not in the room. And, truthfully, I can count on, some fingers, the true allies that I have in my life, and I value those people. And so in return, I put time into those relationships. And I feel like, with the speed and the pace of change that we're all dealing with in this business and many others, that taking that time to slow down and really invest and understand what is important to that other person. How can you best be an ally to them? How can I take my uniqueness and my platform and my very presence and help someone else? That has really been, that being of service to others, is probably the cornerstone of all the successes that I have, experienced in the last 15 years. And before that, but really I had a much bigger focus on that over the last decade and a half. And it has benefited, my life, and I hope the lives of some other people, to no end. To just put service, being of service, and being helpful to others in a reciprocal way, not at the expense of myself, at the top of my list of methods.
Yeah, and I excuse me, I love that you brought that up. And something that I think that emerging leaders may not think of is that they have the ability to contribute as well. So,
Right.
in other words, it's not just the leader being proactive with someone who they might be mentoring or they might be an ally or sponsor for, but about, emerging leaders, or those who are looking up for some help or hand, to be forward thinking and very explicit about what they love, what they're good at, what they're proud of. And I think that can be really important too. What do you think about that?
Oh, I absolutely agree. And, we've heard a lot over the last maybe 5 or 10 years about bringing your authentic self to work. And sometimes I think people gloss over that, right? Because most people don't know who their authentic self is. And it's a discovery process, and it continues. I love what you said about the fact that, new table, new level, new devil, whatever that was, because it's so true that it's such a journey that we go on. And I get so much energy and insight and growth from the people that I mentor. They have no idea how much they help me. I tell them that all the time, but they are the ones giving me energy. They are the ones giving me inspiration. I like to see the world through the eyes of others, and especially emerging leaders, people coming up in their career. Because truthfully, it's not possible to remember everything about what it was like for you, a couple of decades ago. And besides, that knowledge is somewhat not relevant for today's emerging leaders. It is a completely different landscape. So sharing that landscape with me, sharing their ideas, it helps them discover themselves, and it helps me, stay really connected to what is happening in what I like to term the real world, or truth from the trenches, right? Because the danger of being at ever increasingly large tables is that you forget what it was like to eat fast food. I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget what it was like to be at the beginning of my career, because then I can craft programs and content and things that I do to be helpful to those people. The most important thing I can do is help others who are coming up along this path. Because also my pathway was very circuitous. Like, it was not a direct pathway to the chair I sit in today or the next chair I'm going to be in. And so, if somebody else wants to come along this path, hopefully I can smooth it out for them a little bit.
Yeah, that is so amazing. And then along those lines, if someone's like, yes, I want to do that, but, being a mental toughness and high performance coach, I have to know that there are tools that are required to be able to do this. We can conceptually understand this, but we have to have the mindset and the mental toughness to be able to do it. And so clearly you're walking the walk. You've done this before. So if you were sharing with the audience the mindset that's allowed you to keep making forward progress, through a circuitous route, maybe sometimes when it went sideways, sometimes when it went up, what is the mindset that's helped you to be successful?
Well, I feel like I'm pretty confident that I do the best I can. And when I say I do the best I can, I mean that with some precision, meaning I've done my homework. Like, I don't aspire to be a know-it-all or a know everything, but I do aspire to be well educated. And so I mentioned that I've read lots of books on the MBA study list. I self-study a lot. I'm constantly curious, but curiosity with a purpose, right? In terms of continuing to hone my craft. I'm very proud of my craft. I like what I'm able to do as a business solution architect, as a creative media producer, as on-air talent, and I continually try to get better. And one of the things that I've done around that is really, really openly taking feedback. Constructive criticism is a gift. I don't mean when somebody's trying to bully me or be mean or, embarrass me in front of a bunch of people, but I actively seek out criticism of my performance, of my program, of my communication style, whatever it may be, especially from people who I respect and people who are better at those things than me, right? I don't want to play like the team I'm on. I want to play like the team I want to be on. So I'm constantly looking at leaders in my environment and kind of evaluating and reviewing how they approach problem solving or conflict resolution or, morale building on their team, and trying to learn from them. So staying curious with a purpose, doing my homework, making sure I'm studied up on various and sundry topics that are relevant to my role, and really deeply being open to feedback have been three things that, again, I wish I would have learned earlier. I used to take feedback as a deep and personal criticism. I had a pretty large chip on my shoulder when I was young and in this business, because I thought I was trying to prove myself. And one of my early bosses at Microsoft, he said, listen, Karuana, you got the job. You don't have to keep proving yourself. You can exhale. And I burst into tears. It was one of the few times that I've ever cried at work because he hit such a chord in me. It was one of those times where I was really trying to feel like I was enough, and I didn't. And, I've carried that with me. Like, I have this job. I got the job. I don't have to prove something. I have to have fun, and I have to do it well. I have to hone the craft of what I'm trying to do. And I can't do that in a vacuum. Right. And so, those moments where I've really felt stressed or like the program wasn't going well, or my boss didn't think I was doing a good job. And I've had many, many of those moments. And certainly a few that have really stuck out. Those have been my growth opportunities to try to repivot and take that feedback in, even if it's unfounded. I don't have to agree with someone's feedback, but I do need to listen if I want to grow. And then I can kind of parse out, what is, quote unquote, valid feedback based on the source, and what is maybe someone else's perception that they're trying to put into my behavior. That's a
Oh, sorry,
nuance.
go ahead.
No, I just, it's a subtle nuance sometimes, but sometimes it's important to really check the source of the feedback that you're getting. Not all feedback is created equal.
That is 100% true. I'm glad that you brought that up. And I love that curiosity with a purpose. I think that's another hashtag. I'm writing down lots of quotes and hashtags during this conversation. And then when it comes to managing your personal and professional P&L, what exactly does that mean? And can you share with us the best way to do that or to get started?
Well, we came up with this in our conversation earlier, but it's a concept that I've had in my life for a long time. In that, many of us are senior leaders in organizations where we manage a profit and loss statement. We're used to balancing items and making sure that at the end of the day, there's a net profit, but we don't often apply that same rigor to our personal lives, to our own careers, to our own development. And some days there's a profit in the operational area that is my career, and other days the profit area happens to be my personal life. What matters is that I'm creating value and equity for myself over time. It's just another metaphor for creating balance, but I am a project manager at heart. I'm an architect at heart. I like a plan. I like a plan with categories and things and levers that I can maneuver and feel like I can give myself the illusion of some control, right? And I think that, there's some things in life you can't control, but there's an awful lot that we can. And what I do with my time, which is my number one asset that I have to share in the world, and my attention, is very important. And attention management has been a top conversation that we've had, certainly in my business, but in many others. And so, if attention is the currency, where am I spending it? And where is it being taken from me? And where do I need to maybe, stop the hemorrhaging, reduce costs a little bit? For me right now, especially in this current environment, prioritization is everything. And that comes with my time. Like, I'm a caregiver, right? My husband's had some health challenges. I take care of him. I take care of my aging mom. I was taking care of two aging parents, aging folks in my life previously. One of them recently passed away. There's that, and my career, and what I like to do for the community, women in tech, and the community at large. And so there's a lot of things I like to participate in, but it has to balance out with my own health, with time for my relationship, with time to just stare at the ceiling, right? Because people don't prioritize that off time as they should. So my construct for managing that is this profit and loss, and making sure you're accruing equity, and really understanding attention as currency in your life, and being mindful about how you spend it, and about what's generating and giving you back energy. I do have a little bit of a rule at work, no jerks. And so I don't try to convince people of my talent anymore. If you're not into what I bring to the table, I don't need to convince you. That's okay. There's plenty of work in the world. I can go work on something else where people are excited and enthusiastic about what I particularly offer. And that goes to efficiencies. And you know how you see companies cut their product lines. Well, I have certainly done that with my projects and with the time and things that I invest in. So I just would hope that people will take more time to focus on their attention and where they're giving it, and what energy and attention they're getting back, and make sure that they're getting that profit in their lives in whatever way works for them. Because I do think there's this myth that we all need to have some kind of wonderfully balanced life between home and work. For me, that doesn't work. It just isn't how my life works. There are times when I spend more time on my home life, and there are a lot of times when I spend a lot of time on my work, but I love my work. My work is my passion. I absolutely adore my job, so it doesn't feel like work. But I have to make sure that, I do attend to the relationships that I care about in my life. So, any metaphor will work. pick one. But this is the one I picked because it makes sense to me. And it does give me more kind of categories of attention and influence and management than maybe in some of the other metaphors I've used for this kind of balance creation over time.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up. And then one thing I want to introduce too, that if you're doing a P&L or another way of, measuring your impact and well-being in the world, is that, don't have guilt. Like,
Oh
for
yeah.
example, I'll throw out here, my husband's an extrovert. He could be around people 24/7. He loves, 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 loves being around people all the time. And then me, I love being around people, don't get me wrong, but I'm an introvert. So it takes a lot out. I need to kind of decompress. Like, at the end of the year, I go away for 3 or 4 days by myself up to Sonoma, which is the wine country near where I live. And people say, oh, that's weird. Like, you're not going with a girlfriend. You're not going with your wife. What? I'm like,
I love that. I love that idea. I used to take myself on retreats all the time. People think I'm an extrovert because I can talk forever and I do love people and it doesn't take a lot of energy for me to do it, but I require my alone time. And the reason that my relationship works is because my husband understands that. He wouldn't bat an eyelash if I wanted to go on a yoga retreat for 4 days by myself. He would think that that was totally normal. But it is true. I have dealt with guilt when it comes to balancing time like that for myself against things I think I should do for my aging mom, or against things I think I should do for my community, or things I think I should do for my extended family. Right. But what I've come to realize is if I don't invest in myself in ways that work for me, I won't be truly present for all those other things. Right. And sometimes it just means I just need to sleep in and not talk to anyone on Sunday. Right. It doesn't have to be complicated, but I don't feel guilty about that anymore. I used to very deeply, and I have at times. But for the most part now, I realize because I got really sick also by
yeah,
burning.
and then, so that's to my point exactly. You worry about, as women, it's in our DNA, we're caregivers. Like, we take care of people. But, we got to put our oxygen mask on first, because to your point, if we don't, then the universe, or excuse me, whatever you believe in,
Right,
gives you subtle signs. Oh, I'm a little tired. I have a little stuffy nose. You don't listen. Then wham, you get decked. And then you're no good to anyone.
that's right. 100%.
Yeah. So the message is, you don't need it. For everyone listening, you absolutely don't need it. For us, but permission granted with no guilt to take care of yourself.
100%. You will be in the, I really learned this at the beginning of the pandemic. There was so much happening for us in Microsoft, nothing compared to healthcare workers or what have you. But in technology, we had this, and in Microsoft Teams in particular, huge growth in the use of our service for video meetings and what have you, all of these rapid deployments, supporting governments, supporting local agencies, supporting hospitals and healthcare and schools. There was a lot going on. But I really, really learned my key phrase now, which is that speed kills. Like, you really had to slow down, to validate your requirements, to make time with people. Like, going too fast from meeting to meeting or in conversation back to back all day long, it was really detrimental to our ability to be creative, to problem solve, to be present. You need emotional elasticity with other people to operate at speed. And you can't create emotional connection and elasticity with people if you're only breezing by them in some random video meeting. So, it's been very important for me to be present for relationships in a different way. And it's not something I do great every day. Let's be clear. Like, this is growth for me to slow down. I have a tendency to run too fast and do too many things. And so slowing down, being clear about priorities, managing my own P&L, these are all things that I continually try to get better at myself. So it's not like, oh, I'm sitting here saying I'm amazing at this. These are things that I continue to talk about. So I'll remind myself to stick to it and walk the walk of doing what I'm telling other people to do, right? So it's a journey.
Yeah, that's why as coaches love being coaches, because as we're coaching, we're like, oh, okay.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's 100% true, right? So.
And then, so for everyone listening, I mean, you shared so many gold nuggets of wisdom. What is if you could boil it down to one call to action or one thing for people to do or remember, what have you, what would that be? What do you want to leave everyone with?
I think, besides free yourself and manage your attention, it's really about, as cheesy as this might sound, it's for me, let me back up and say, for me, it's been about self-confidence. I never believed in myself when I was younger. And I wish that I would have had somebody say, embrace your journey, whatever direction it takes you, be present in the moment, learn from others, and keep going. You got this, right? Like just tell yourself you got this. A teacher long ago taught me about turning down the volume knob in my head for that self-critic voice. And I still practice that every day. When it starts to come out and tell me all the things I could do different and better and blah, 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 I just gently turn down the volume on that and remind myself that I got this. I can do this. And it's not because it's me alone, but because I've developed relationships with other people where I can go to for answers. I can be transparent with them about my doubts and questions. I can get guidance for them. It's not that I've got this because I'm amazing. It's that I've got this because I've built around me a community of people who see me and hear me and that I trust. It doesn't have to be 50 people. I'm talking about 6 people in my life, right? That I can go to as my council of guides, right? I think that sometimes we underappreciate our ancestors and our elders in this kind of American culture. And so I make a concerted effort to have that kind of energy in my life and trusted emerging leaders that can really help me navigate the world. So, believe in yourself. You got this. And if you
So,
need help, reach out.
and that is so important. So, for everybody listening, just remember when you hear that negative voice to maybe acknowledge it, turn down the volume, and remember that you got this and don't be afraid to reach out for help. Karuana, thank you so much for your time and sharing some of your amazing wisdom. I look forward to following your journey.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.